The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu, like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway, noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's. Hey, greetings, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit. It is time once again for our weekly news roundup, the week that was on Deadline Detroit. And as always, I have a great panel of guests here to help us dissect the news, including a newcomer this week. But as always, we have Allan, Lengel, and Nancy Derringer of Deadline Detroit. We appreciate you both being here.
I want some of those greens, man. Those greens look really good.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Stephen Henderson, of course. He's the host of Detroit Today on WDET and also, of course, Detroit Black Journal on Detroit Public Television, among other things. One Detroit, lots of other side projects that he's got going on, including Bridge Detroit and everything else. So thank you for being here, Stephen. I appreciate it very much. Yeah. And because he's a busy guy, you know, and so is our next guest. Jeff Sakwa is with us. He, of course, is the president at Noble Realty, the former secretary of the Michigan Civil Rights Commission, the current commissioner of the Attorney Grievance Commission, former co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party, and the current president of the nonprofit Defeat the Label Anti-Bullying Campaign, and also a current board member of the Oakland Schools Education Foundation. So look at those credentials.
We found a Republican willing to sit on our panel.
I have been trying for a long time, and people have not necessarily been willing to do it. But
it's over.
We do appreciate you being here. And I'm guessing, you know, just like everybody else, you will have a nomination for Schmuck of the Week. It may not align with my Schmuck, but that's what it's all about. We like to have divergent viewpoints here. In fact, I've already got a couple of Schmuck nominees online from some of my Grosse Pointe Republican friends who are saying if it's not Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for ignoring the border, then I don't know what I'm talking about. Now, I think my Schmuck may be a little different than their opinion, but hey, it's out there, and I just wanted to recognize that opinion is out there. But let's talk about what is going on here. The news that broke overnight, and this is not something that's really important in my life, but we did lose the Duke of Edinburgh last night. Prince Philip passed away at the age of 99. I know that's a shock of shocks. And there's going to be a lot of coverage. There's already been a ton of coverage about it this morning, but I still wonder why we in this country are still so fascinated with the royal family. If you look at ratings for things like The Crown, you look at ratings for royal weddings and Prince Harry and all this other stuff, we are obsessed with this family that we have had nothing to do with for 200-something years.
Well, you know what? I've been watching The Crown, and I find it very educational. It's a reminder of what a great world power Britain is, and I think a lot of it seems to be, you know, true or accurate. And I think what we see is that the royal family has a lot more say than we actually realize. We just think they're like, it's a lot of parading around and waving the hand, but they're actually involved with a lot of the politics there.
All right, go ahead, Nance.
I was just going to say, as the only woman on this panel, I feel like I have to speak up for the Crown as well. And my interest in Prince Philip went from 0 to 90 for the first 2 seasons when he was played by the incredibly sexy Matt Smith. Is it Smith? Is that his name? Matthew somebody. Anyway, and I realized, and because having born in the 50s, I didn't realize that Queen Elizabeth married for love and lust. I mean, he was a hot number in his youth, and she wasn't too bad herself. And I think they somehow managed to make a nice family out of it. I mean, they were still having kids when she was well into her 30 or closing in on 40. So, you know, that's good. But the other thing is we like him because of the crown jewels, the outfits, and the soap opera. So.
The soap opera is right, though. I mean, I did watch The Crown, and there were periods in that thing where I could see where Prince Charles turned out the way he did.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing I just want to mention real fast is the one time that I really regretted not having a cable is because I love the BBC when a member of the royal family dies. Did you know they have a procedure where as soon as the news breaks, they go to a break and they have like black ties, like black silk ties that all the male anchors put on, and the women put on like more sober clothing. and then they come back and they tell the world what has happened. So
wow, it's sort of like the white smoke coming out of the chimney at the Vatican.
I think during the interview with Oprah, I think we realized when Meghan says, "Well, I went to HR," and you're like, "What, HR?" And then you realize the grandness of this whole operation.
It is pretty massive, but go ahead, Stephen.
I watched The Crown too, and at first reluctantly, because I was like, "Why do I care about this?" Right? I'm not interested, but I thought it did a really great job of humanizing what, for me, was this kind of distant notion of, an institution, an archaic institution in another country. The personalities that come out in that series are really, really quite powerful. And in fact, I would argue that Philip, who is, was before this, I think, a generally unknown personality to Americans in the royal family, really comes alive in that series. And you see not just who he is, but who he was forced to be because of the role he was forced to play, but also that, that it was kind of a subdued role based on who he actually was. I mean, this is a naval hero, pretty proud man who takes on a role that is ultimately subservient to his wife. I thought they did a really good job of telling that story, and it made me care about him. It made me care about him as a person.
Well, it certainly seems as if he took a lot of that stuff out on his oldest son.
I can't understand the English accent, so I just turned to White Boy Rick document.
Which, yes, is out on Netflix, by the way, if anybody wants to see it. It's from a few years ago, but it was actually pretty well done.
All right. He
more accurate,
like a prince in there, so with his fur coat. So.
It's a more accurate portrayal than the movie with Matt McConaughey. McConaughey. I knew Nancy would know the exact
hot smoking naked guy.
I think it. The documentary is a lot better, and it's a fascinating story. I mean, I've known Rick since the early '90s when we started writing about the drug gangs and about Gil Hill getting.
Where were you hanging out, Lengel?
Well, I was at the Detroit News, but I got to know a lot of dope dealers, from the Chamber Brothers to Johnny Curry was in prison in Minnesota. I used to talk to him regularly, and Rick used to call, and I talked to Rick probably for 20 years. And then he started getting into the whole movie thing, and I got bumped off the list. But I did talk to him shortly before he got out. But it's a fascinating story, really, of Detroit history. So.
And I saw the trailer. I'll probably watch it one of these days. So I saw the trailer, and I saw that our friend Steve Fishman is in the trailer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he definitely is.
He dyed his hair for the role.
All right. Let's move on to Washington here for just a second. President Biden yesterday signing some executive actions to do anything about gun violence. And just in the last 3 days, we've had some horrific incidents with this ex-NFL player killing a whole family before taking his own life. You had another incident this morning in Texas where you had a mass shooting that took place already today. These measures that he's talking about, ghost guns, and also not being able to turn a pistol into, something that's more of a short rifle. They're not things that are going to do a whole lot, but at least it sends a signal that somebody's trying to do something. It's going to be up to Congress if something is going to happen that's actually meaningful in any way. And Jeff, I mean, you look like you've got an opinion on this. I don't see a lot happening there.
I am in full agreement. I'm tired. Congress has got to act together to do something. Executive orders, whatever's in charge. We just got done talking about the royal family. Trump's not royalty. Biden's not royalty. Congress has got to quit the BS, get together, figure it out, and move forward on every major issue. It could be the four of us could be done in this show and figure it out. It's not difficult. It's a bad guy. Yes, a bad guy's still going to get a gun. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If I want to get a gun, I'm going to get a gun. If the guy wants to get over the border, he wants to get over the border, but you can make it harder.
I think everybody agrees with that we need to make it harder for these bad guys to get guns because, we don't want to be the situation where, only a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. Well, how about if we get the bad guy from getting the gun? Red flags. Is there any movement that you see anywhere where state legislatures in particular, are going to take this stuff up.
Hope so.
You know what? It's the whole thing is just crazy. I mean, you can get a gun out there. I could figure out. I can make some phone calls and get an illegal gun. I think.
You can go to a store.
Well, you apparently have a lot of illegal friends. So,
but what I'm saying is, right now, what we're seeing so often in these cases, and I've covered so many of them, from Orlando to Virginia Tech, and a lot of times the purchases are made within a week at a legal. Legitimately through a gun store, somebody just walking in. Some of these guys, nerdy guys, crazy guys, but they're just walking in and purchasing the guns, and that something has to be done. When I walk in and I'm looking a little suspicious and I've got a little crazy eyes, and I say, "Yeah, I want a couple of those, assault weapons." I don't know. I know maybe legally and constitutionally there's some issues there, but I would be like, I want to run this guy through, some careful, a little bit more of a careful background check, which there should be some option, and it should be mandatory for everybody to have a little bit more of a thorough background check than we're having. And the other thing is, and we've seen it for so long, is the straw purchases where I'm a convicted felon. I can't buy a gun, but I've got 5 cousins. I give them the money. They go to a gun show. They buy AK-47s. They buy, 9mm. And, it's so easy. And then the other issue is background checks with, I can buy a gun from Jeff. And we're not going to have any background check.
Yeah.
Well, some states do have laws that's not exactly true. Some states do have laws.
Okay. But we need federal laws. We need federal laws.
I think we're all missing. These people go on these rampages, kill themselves, and not afraid to die. So keep in mind, when someone's insane, they're insane, and you're not going to legislate insanity for it. You want to talk about putting money towards something, put it towards mental health.
Then let's do that. I mean, I don't disagree with that. We definitely need more funding for mental health in this country. But the fact is, they talk about it. They talk about solutions to this all the time in Congress, yet nothing ever really gets done. They can sit there and say, well, we really need to talk about the mental health aspect of this.
So why don't we agree to make them the schmuck of the week?
Well, we could. Congress could get my vote just about every week on their inaction on so many different things. But I mean, Stephen, one thing that I saw yesterday that I thought was important is changing the sort of language around this to call this an epidemic, to look at the public health crisis that is gun violence in this country, because there are crazy people in every part of the world, yet they don't have as many incidents as we do.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I think that was a key part of what the president was talking about. It is a public health issue that calling it and classifying it that way also gives the federal government some more ability to do some research that has not been done about gun violence. The other really key part of what the president said yesterday, I thought, was hinting at this idea that it's absurd, and it is, that gun manufacturers have absolutely
no liability
for the weapons they manufacture and sell. Now, look, we can talk about what the limits of that liability should be. It shouldn't be unlimited. But the idea that it's the only industry in our country that has absolutely no responsibility for what it makes and sells speaks to the ridiculous power of the gun lobby. And I would say that the reason that you saw the president of the United States talking about that yesterday is because that gun lobby is weaker today than it has been in the last 35 years. I mean,
Stephen, would you go after alcohol companies for drunk drivers? I mean, where does it stop?
Well, you can go after bars.
You can go after the bars that serve them.
Yeah.
The bar is not the big deal. Bar, the alcohol companies want all the money, right?
What's that?
The alcohol, the people who make the wines and the spirits are the ones that have all the money, not the local bar.
I think there should be different liability for different things, right?
We have no liability as we sit here today.
We have no liability with guns. There is a lot of liability with alcohol. You overserve somebody and they go do something.
No. The liquor manufacturer has no liability.
Well, I mean, they did go after tobacco, though. I mean, tobacco.
Tobacco is another example of the power of the government to hold somebody accountable for something that kills. And again, I think we can talk about within reason, the limits of that liability, what makes sense, what is.
How about this as a starting point? I mean, we hear these horrific stories all the time about a little kid who finds dad's gun and accidentally shoots his brother or his cousin or something like that. We see these things happen all the time. And if this product is so easy to use that a child, a 3-year-old, can pick it up, fire it, and kill somebody, that seems to be a bit of a manufacturing defect on my thing. The auto companies couldn't get away with that. You have child lock doors in the back so they can't jump out of the car when the cars are moving. I mean, there are regulations about this kind of stuff. That would be a starting point that at least shows we're serious about making sure that innocent people aren't harmed by a product that is far too easy for them to use. I mean, look, I can't even get the pills out of my thing in the morning because the cap is so hard. I mean, a gun should not be that easy to fire.
Well, the 7-year-old kid will be able to do it, though. Trust me.
The safety end of it is where I think the liability does come in. There's a lot more technology that's available to make guns safer to use that the gun companies feel no obligation to include in their products because they can't be held liable. I think changing that paradigm would inspire more development of things that would stop children, for instance, from being able to use guns.
It certainly, Jeff, would do a lot for the attorneys in the world.
Yeah, well, let me say this. We're talking today. I know approximately 10 people that have gotten out and bought guns in the last few months because of the environment that we're living in today. With 5 of us here, if I can count correctly, getting along just fine. Why is listen, the world is hostile, our country's hostile, our state is hostile. Every time somebody does something, it's 100% right or it's 100% wrong. It's not the answer. But people are now afraid. Now we've got to defund the police, movement. You have different issues. The cops have guns. Now I don't have. Are you going to defund the police? They're not going to come to my house. I got to go buy a gun. There's never 100% clear answer to anything, is my point. And we just got, again, we're talking about Congress or our state legislatures, got to get it together because the world's falling apart. And I don't care about me. I'm 61. I don't, whatever. The next generation is so screwed. I don't know where to begin for this. They're screwed. We did it. We're responsible for it.
The world is not as scary as you think it is. Okay. I mean, that is something I believe that this is why I cannot stand Michael Moore. Okay. He sometimes will have a brilliant insight, but he'll surround it with crap. And I think the one insight that he has had around guns, which is, what was the movie? Bowling for Columbine, was the way that fear is used as a marketing tool in this country. And, it's like, we believe that if we don't, go out strapped to the nines, that we're going to just be sitting ducks for whatever. And the fact is, the world, yes, you have to have common sense, but we all live either in or adjacent to the city of Detroit. And I don't think, I'll go anywhere in the city of Detroit. I mean, I feel like I have a certain amount of Karen level street sense. I don't ever feel that I need to handle or pack a weapon in order to do it. And I just reject this idea that we have to go around in fear. And it's just, this is a major marketing thing for guns.
No, I think it's, no offense, I think it's the media, because when you turn the TV,
yes,
it emphasizes everything. So
yes, absolutely.
It's funny when
I'm not afraid of getting shot today. And I go down to Detroit quite often. I'm not afraid. I don't own a gun. So
no, I'm a member of the media, and I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Go ahead, Allan.
I was going to say real quick, it's funny. It reminds me when Jeff says, the media builds it up. When I was covering the Chambers brothers, the gang, 4 brothers who were on trial in U.S. District Court, it was probably like 1989 or so. I mean, they were running the crack on the east side. They were huge. And the judge got so mad, he reprimanded the media for portraying this case as so scary and that the jurors should be fearful or whatever. And so, and he was just saying this is ridiculous. And so we later found out from one of the attorneys that Judge Sir Heinrich, who was reprimanding the media, was wearing a bulletproof vest on the bench and he had a gun at the bench, which I can tell you on a lot of cases, the judges are not doing that. So,
Allan, let me ask you a question. It's good. You guys are all fixtures of media. Don't you think the name of the game is business? So Fox says, we'll take the Republican. We're going to make our money from Republicans. CNN, but it's not news anymore. It's a business. And business go to profits and profits go to bottom lines. And I watch all of them, and I think I live in two different countries when I watch both stations, quite frankly. I really do. It's not even a joke. I like how can like even the headline story of the day, they can't even agree on what the headline story of the day is, and they're both guilty and they're both wrong, and you can't convince. Now the show that you're on, you guys repair him quite often. It's Devin Scalion's show. I've met him one time in my life. I walked up to him and I said to him, "You're the best guy." I have no idea what he is. He asks every tough question. He doesn't care who they are, what the issue is. You have no idea where he stands. I think he does it. We need more of him, by the way. Get him on the show.
There you go.
Let's
even can pass that along to him on Sunday.
Am I wrong?
He's been on this show before, yeah.
Yeah, he has been on the show.
About CNN and these guys that just, they fit the box, they sell their advertising accordingly. And now we live in the world of boycotting. And I will tell you this is a good story. When I was involved earlier in politics, they were mad at Denise Illich for having a fundraiser for Barack Obama at her house. And they wanted to protest Little Caesars Pizza. So we're not doing that. Number one, she has every right to have a fundraiser, okay? Number two, Democrats and Republicans work for Little Caesars, okay? And number three, Mike Illich gave a lot of money to the Republicans over the years and Democrats. So this idea of boycotting, people are employed in certain places. The owners are going to go away with millions of dollars. The people that work there are going to be the ones ultimately to suffer.
Well, we have seen so many different discussions about cancel culture, and it's funny. They'd be like, "Well, they're canceling me, so we should boycott them." I'm like, so wait, doesn't that sort of cancel each other out? It doesn't make any sense. You're talking about cancel culture, that you're talking about canceling something else. It's driving me nuts. But let's just get back to this gun thing for just a second. Because we can't seem to get past this notion of the slippery slope argument that we always hear on this, that any sort of regulations on guns are going to lead to them taking your guns. And any magazine that's about hunting or outdoors life, I mean, all those editorials in those magazines are all written by the NRA, and they send them to these magazines because they own most of them now, like, hunting and fishing and all this stuff. And they all talk about how the government's coming to take your guns. So they've created this paranoia around gun regulation to think that any action is just a step towards the ultimate action. And given the Supreme Court's reluctance to touch this stuff at all, I just don't see it happening. And it's not based in reality, so we can't have a real discussion.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Biden has just nominated David Chipman, who grew up in Rochester here.
That's going to be an interesting.
He mistakenly said AFT, which is the Teachers Federation.
Yeah.
But
it must be senile. Okay.
Yeah. But the problem is that, and he's going to have a challenge, is that the NRA and all these pro-gun groups make it so hard to get a confirmation for ATF. They don't like anyone who wants to really enforce even the existing laws. And he's going to have a hard time again, because there's people like, down, in West Virginia, senators, all in different states that are going to be in trouble if they're perceived as voting for somebody who's enforcing gun laws and encroaching on, the rights, the Second Amendment rights of people.
And you know who may stand in the way of that appointment is none other than West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. So this man is emerging as the most powerful man in Washington right now. He sort of usurped the role from his buddy from a neighboring state of Kentucky in Mitch McConnell, and basically having more sway than just about anybody, because without him, the Democrats don't have the votes they need as long as the Republicans remain locked together. He said that he's not open to changing the filibuster. He doesn't want to use reconciliation to pass any of these bills. He seems to think that there's still some room for compromise on things like infrastructure and everything else. I don't know. It seems to me that we are going to be in this perpetual cycle of nothingness in the Senate, which has been really the way it's been for, the last 10 years.
Can we throw him some pork?
The old fashioned. Let's start bribing people. It's hey, who wants a bridge to nowhere?
A freeway and a few other things, and then just
if you think about it, I mean, we have been in this cycle for a long time, and there have been other periods in American history where we've been in the same place, and it's also always been marked by a lot of executive orders. If you think about Franklin Roosevelt's first two terms, he also is the record holder, I believe, still for executive orders. voters, 3,000.
It's early.
Yeah. But I mean, what it means is that the politics have taken over the process, and you can't get anything done. And you see executive orders issued as a way of breaking the logjam, of putting pressure on whatever party's in the minority to come to their senses and at least consider some of the things that the majority party is talking about. We've been locked for a while in kind of a back and forth where you've got these very narrow majorities on each side, and neither is he able to kind of break through. I think that Biden has more chance of that than the last two presidents, chiefly because of the relationships he has with people in the Senate. I mean, Joe Biden's been in Washington an awfully long time. He and Mitch McConnell have been friends for several decades. And I think if anybody has, the ability to appeal to McConnell's sense of institution and purpose, it's probably Joe Biden.
Let me say this: the people voted for a deadlock. So maybe
they didn't know that's what they were voting for.
People, maybe some people don't want. I want some change, but maybe people. That's what we voted. So I mean, it's been there. I hate giving anybody on either side these executive orders. It's an FU game, and it's not a good game. You see what happens, and Allan and I talk quite often, and we probably agree. What do you think? 67% of the time, Allan?
Probably
30% of the time. But on the Supreme Court issue, when they jammed a Supreme Court judge through, the other party would have done the same thing. You can talk about all the virtue of both sides. They get the power, they take it, they run with it. It's both sides. It's almost, I don't even want to use the word human nature because I like to think I'm better than the average person and more fair than the average person. But at the end of the day, it's well, are we allowed to swear?
I mean,
yeah, sure. Why not?
It's a clusterfuck. It's a clusterfuck.
I mean, so Republicans say this all the time. Democrats would do the same thing if they were in charge. And yet there is no historical precedent for that. I mean, Democrats have never, ever done what Republicans did in the last term, which was to block a sitting president from appointing any justice to the court.
But you know what the loophole is in that, Stephen? They didn't control the executive.
There's nothing in the law about that.
Democratic Senates confirm Republican Supreme Court nominees. I mean, that's happened a million times throughout history. And the question is, well, do you get you get the judge that both sides can agree on? They have never blocked a president from appointing a Supreme Court justice, let alone for an entire year. The last year,
you're talking about Merrick Garland,
right?
Yes.
Merrick Garland, and
I'm not disagreeing with you, but the answer was they had control of the Senate, they had the right to block, and then the last time when they jammed it through, they had the presidency. And I'm not agreeing with it. I'm just saying.
What does the Constitution say? It says the president shall appoint with the advice and consent of the Senate. It does not say that the Senate gets to hold the seat hostage and not appoint or block an appointment. And Democrats have never done that.
Then why did Biden go against that when he was a senator? It's right on tape.
But they never did it. They never did it.
I mean, Biden said we shouldn't do it.
But they did.
Yeah, well, this argument could go on for a long time.
By the way, I'll say, Merrick Garland, I say it's really heartening to see.
My earlier points called hypocrisy. That's all it is.
I think.
Go ahead, Allan.
I was going to say, Merrick Garland, I said it's really heartening to see an attorney general in there who is got a lot of integrity. I mean, we've had some really great attorney generals, and he has the potential to be that. Has the potential to be one who's going to be fair, who's going to really do the right thing. And I mean, it could change, who knows, but I have some confidence in him. A lot more. Actually, Jeff Sessions became somewhat of a surprise. He had a lot more integrity in that position than I expected. I mean, and he was just tormented by Trump.
It's the theory of relativity. It's like he goes in like a flaming, racist, and he comes out like,
a hero.
Well,
Mother Teresa.
Speaking of people of integrity, Congressman Matt Gaetz might be in a little bit of trouble. Matt Gaetz, it looks as if his buddy, Mr. Greenberg, is cooperating with the feds. And Greenberg's lawyer himself said, I wouldn't be too comfortable if I'm Matt Gaetz right now. So his lawyer knows what he's saying to the feds in this investigation. So now there's this trip to the Bahamas that's under scrutiny and some other things. And it comes out this week in the New York Times. And of course, Trump has denied this, but that Gaetz went in there asking for a blanket pardon. Yes. Before he'd been accused of any crimes for he and some other buddies in Congress. We don't know who. But I just, the gall, like, hey, I may have done something illegal. I don't know. How about a pardon just in case? I mean, come on now. Matt Gaetz is in deep shit.
Going on a business sale.
That's right.
Yeah. Can I just say that there is a great, for a person with my personality, there is so much pleasure to be gained from seeing a truly stupid criminal story and just reading about it every day. And today, I don't know if you saw the Daily Beast story that dropped last night, but it was the Venmo. They went back through Greenberg's Venmo, which he had set for public. And it showed that Matt Gaetz had Venmoed him $900 late one night, and early the next morning, Greenberg Venmoed out to 3 young women exactly $900.
I have a question I have a Venmo account. Explain to me why, as I was reading the Daily Beast story.
It's done in a Venmo account. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, I was reading the Daily Beast story, and then I'm suddenly seeing like how they know about all these Venmo. And I remember when you do a Venmo transaction, you can make it public or you can make it private. And I do not understand why you send $50, someone picks up something for groceries. Why that would be
because it defaults to public because it's like the app wants people, potential users or other users, to see how widely used it is, so it makes them feel more comfortable with it. So the default setting is public. And if you're like me, I don't Venmo that much.
You could say, do it Venmo, buy a gun bought by Allan, Lengel.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and if you're like me, I tend to I Venmo my trainer and I Venmo a couple other people, my daughter from time to time, and I always put some joke in the memo line. It's always like,
you're an entertainer.
Yes, I know, but I mean, I'll always put something like, further maintenance on my fine ass kind of thing. That's and that's it. That's my trainer. But it's so he should have just said 3 whores in his
underage.
Yeah,
potentially. We don't know that, but either way, I mean, this is not the kind of behavior we typically are looking for from our Congress people. And I think he's in real trouble. Another one of his staffers just quit yesterday. So it's clearly the rat's leaving the sinking ship here. How much longer?
I think Cuomo's the happiest guy in America this week.
Yeah. It's like the Chandra Levy case, right before 9/11. So it just kind of went away.
But in watching Fox News last night, clearly they are trying to get off the Matt Gaetz train here because one, Tucker Carlson doesn't want anything more to do with him. But they went all Hunter Biden last night. Because apparently,
God, really?
Those pictures are out there. They're really starting to do this. And they're like, look at this guy. And you look at the messages back and forth from Hunter Biden to his dad, where he's accusing his dad of ruining his life, trying to blame the family's problems on him. And if you don't run for president, it makes it look like I ruined the family. And all of the president's messages are like, stay focused on your recovery, son. We love you. We want you to get better. It's like, okay, a caring dad who's got a son that's going through a hell of a time, clearly. But Fox is acting like this is some sort of giant scandal. And I'm like, well, this guy's not an elected official. He's not in public life.
Joe Biden revealed as caring father.
I mean, so Hunter Biden clearly is a guy going through some pretty bad midlife crises kind of stuff and struggling a bit right now, but trying to come out on the other end. But I'm sorry, you cannot equate the two. Matt Gaetz, I think he's in trouble, and at some point, people are going to start ditching him pretty quick, including his pals at Fox.
Well, I'm going to tell a little story. When I was 16 years old, my dad sat me down and he said, "Son, what's the most powerful weapon in the world?" I said, "Nuclear." He goes, "Nope." He got down. You guys know what the most powerful weapon in the world is. Guys have lost kingdoms for it, countries for it, jobs in life. He said, "Don't be stupid. So far, so good." Or as I like to say, every girl tells me no. Whatever.
Oh, man. All right. The comedy stylings of Jeff Sakwa, everybody.
Yeah.
But Matt Gaetz is just, this one's going to get more interesting. And I think some more details will be revealed shortly.
More entertaining, not interesting.
Perhaps.
Well,
Perhaps.
It's not the first sex scandal that has plagued Congress, and it won't be the last.
All right, let's move on to voting rights for just a second, because there's a couple of different things going on here in regards to Georgia that I want to talk about. One, obviously, is Major League Baseball, their decision to take the All-Star game out of Atlanta and that debate. And the other part is some of the language that I'm seeing from some conservative publications like the National Review that are saying the quiet part out loud, that maybe everybody shouldn't vote. There was a piece this week in the National Review saying, well, maybe we should have smarter, better people voting. Not everybody should vote in this country if we want to actually have a good country. In
other words, Republicans?
Well, it's kind of, but basically, calling for things like, it's like a literacy test. I mean, all the different things that they used to do to limit people's access to the polls, the National Review actually came out and said, maybe we should go back to those days.
Can I speak in on that a little bit?
Sure.
So obviously, I'm for anybody to be able to vote. However, there's certain jobs. When I ran for Michigan State trustee, no one knows who I am. If my name would have been Smith, I would have had a better chance. If I would have been a female, would have been. That's what stats show. So are we better off letting the governor pick what they do for all the other universities? And I would entertain at the Supreme Court level, because what I've learned is the courts affect our lives every day more than the other branch of government. And we don't know who our judges are, especially on the Supreme Court level, okay? So at the end of the day, if you're O'Connor, O'Brien, we all, our parties look for the Irish name to get them on the ballot, whatever it is. And I think if both sides had and a lot of states do it, they had a recommend to the governor, and you have a bipartisan team. At that level, I'm not sure people should be voting for the state Supreme Court, to be quite honest about it, because they don't know who they're voting for.
Oh, well, I've had a problem with that for a long time. They certainly should not be partisan nominees.
Well, it's non-partisan. They still don't know who they're. Yeah, what's my point? Shouldn't be part. They should either be put on by the governor, whatever it is, and put them on what people vote. But to go find the right name or the right sex or the right minority at that particular time is just. And then it's too important of a job.
But that's a distinction, though, that you're making between which jobs should actually be elected positions and who should be allowed to vote in the first place. Two different conversations.
Probably.
If you talk to Richard Bernstein, he feels very strongly about that there should be an election. He says, I would never be appointed. No one would ever appoint a blind judge. He says, it's only because I was elected I'm sitting on the bench.
Do you think it's the household
maybe
name?
if he had like a blindfold, like the spirit of justice.
Yeah. Do you think him being on TV for 10 years had anything to do with him winning?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it helps. Yeah,
Thank you. No one has the money to do that. You know?
But what happened?
But you know what? He's a brilliant guy.
He's a brilliant guy. I like him.
And he's a very fair person, and I think he's a very good judge, and I think so.
Well,
I'm not saying any of them are bad judges. I'm just saying I'd like to know that some people in the law field have a say of who's making these huge decisions that affect our lives every day. And they've had major decisions just in terms of the governor having the power to do what she's doing right now. And we all know, if I talk to anybody on the street, can you name me 2 Supreme Court justices? Good luck. They don't know. They don't know.
You've hijacked the thread, though. We're back to what Craig was talking about with the Georgia case, which is which doesn't have anything to do with who should be elected and who shouldn't, but who should be able to vote, or how people should vote, rather.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And I mean, like I said, the National Review, this piece, and let me click down in here for just a second so I can see it. But it is written by, who wrote this one? Oh, Kevin Williamson. Yeah. And it's titled, Why Not Fewer Voters? And he basically argues that not everybody should be allowed to vote because they're too stupid.
You know what? To hell with Kevin Williamson. He's a troll. I mean, I've read enough Kevin Williamson.
But they put it in their publication, and I mean,
it's the quiet part out loud.
You're talking about it. There's nobody that agrees with that.
I mean,
I think there are more than you think, Jeff.
If you really wanted to take stupid people out of the voting pool, you'd have to start with a lot of people. Well, I was just going to say a lot of people who. Who was the one who stood up after primary and said, I love the poorly educated?
Yeah, what he's saying
Go ahead, Stephen.
is not what he's actually saying. I mean, what he's saying is a proxy for what has been Republican policy for the last 5 decades since the passage of the Voting Rights Act. I mean, look, civil rights and the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act changed politics in this country. It switched the positions of the parties. I mean, the Democratic Party before that was the party that opposed racial progress and became the party of racial progress. And the Republican Party after that became the party of racial exclusion. And look, we're at a reckoning point. The Republican Party's got to decide whether it's going to have a future in the pluralistic America that we're living in now. It's going to have to decide whether it can attract the votes of African Americans, of people of Latino background, of Arab Americans, and all kinds of different people. It has rested its success for a long time on the idea that it can win with white votes and suppressed votes among those other categories. And the election last year was pivotal only in the sense that it proved that strategy has no future. And so what you're seeing now are some Republicans coming out and saying, look, let's limit the number of voters. Let's make sure that these folks don't get to cast ballots. I think the more future-minded Republicans, the people who are really trying to help the party survive, are saying the opposite, which is we've got to find a way to get more of these voters to support.
As a guy who was a co-chair of the party, 2016, we made a huge effort to get the vote out in Detroit. We had an office in Detroit, both in the midterm and this last time too. Mm-hmm. I will also say that I personally, yes, there are obviously bigots out there in the Republican Party. I'm not naive, but all the people I dealt with, I would completely disagree that we weren't trying. We know that African Americans have every right to vote, should vote, and we have to make it. Our party has to come up with the strategy to get the vote. Number one, and number two, be inclusive, of course, to make laws that benefit everybody, to give everybody fair. My whole thing, why I got involved in politics, quite simply, is education, because I see what's going on. The fairness education doesn't exist, and I was lucky. I was born to two parents in the suburbs and a great school district. So if I failed, that's on me. If a kid fails in Detroit, I don't think it's on him. I just don't. I don't think you can talk about that everybody has the same. No, they don't. No, they don't. They don't.
Well, can I ask you something, then, Jeff? I mean, what are you? I don't mean you personally, but what are Republicans who think like you doing to quiet the bigots, the people who are saying maybe we shouldn't have so many
Well, let me say this: I'm Jewish, so we're a minority, okay? And I've never run into anybody in the Republican Party. I'm not exact, maybe behind my back, but they all defend Israel to the nth degree. Okay,
that's a different thing.
That's a different thing.
Okay. I'm not my point. It's not different. I'm a minority. Okay, so they can very easily hate Jews like they hate everyone. I have never personally seen anybody say that. I'm not saying they don't. I didn't run into it on my level. Okay, so I don't. The Ku Klux Klan isn't in our meetings. Okay, I don't see them. So
of course they are.
By the way, we denounced. Remember Mr. Ajema? He was denounced. Okay, people been denounced over and over and over again. Whatever it is, they don't represent. I mean, they don't represent the Republican. By the fact, if you really study it, they hate government. Period. They don't care who's in charge. And that horrible thing that happened in Pittsburgh because they were mad at Trump for being too good to Israel.
Okay, before Lengel jumps in with something about Judaism and Israel, I want to just say one thing.
And good Shabbos.
You can say that, all right, and then you will have but the Wayne County Board of Canvassers met, and one of the canvassers said, "I'd be fine with certifying all the other elections in Wayne County where we had imbalanced precincts, but not Detroit." And Black people, maybe we should defer to the actual Black person on this panel hear that and they hear racism, and I don't blame them. It is racist. So I'm just
so Jeff, look, and this is not an original quote, but I know lots of people in the Republican Party who are not racist, obviously.
Yes, me too.
But I also know that the racists in this country think the Republican Party is racist, and that's why they identify with it.
You think African Americans are racist too in any way, shape, or form?
Well, no. I mean, we don't have the power to create a society that that's unequal from the jump. I mean,
there's bigotry. There is bigotry.
Yeah, you're talking for two different definitions of what racism is.
About power.
Not really. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Pardon me.
I mean, the racists in our country believe that the Republican Party represents their point of view. I mean, overwhelmingly, I think that's true. And that is, so it's not about whether someone like you is a racist. It's about whether you're willing to have a tent that's big enough to include people who would keep the inequality that we have for their own.
I hear your point, but I don't know. I could be brutally honest with you. I don't know we didn't meet with the Ku Klux Klan to get their endorsements.
But here's something interesting. I just want to pass along real quick, just to put this into context here. The Boca Raton Republican Club has invited the Proud Boys leader to speak at their dinner coming up next month.
So speaking of Boca Raton in Florida, the question I was going to ask with Jeff is, and Nancy, it's not a Jewish oriented thing. Trump, to me,
we control
the last 4 years to send a message. Unlike Ronald Reagan, who said there's no room under the tent for all the bigotry, the Klansmen, all that stuff. It seems to me Trump encouraged the tent to be much wider than it should have been, and he did not believe in exclusion of racists. I don't think he did anything to discourage or try to dissuade people that racists weren't welcome in the party, that Klansmen weren't welcome in the party, and so address that.
I will say this: he said both. He said many times, "I don't." You can look it up. He said,
after he was pressured.
Yeah, but no, kids are Jewish, for crying out loud. Whatever, his grandchildren are Jewish. But the other day, I tend to believe, Allan, that anytime he opened his mouth, I got a little nervous. Okay, and we've had that discussion for sure. But he's history, so. Let's every time an issue comes up, and I want Stephen to hear this. Every time I'm not African American, I will never speak on any issue deals because I don't walk in their shoes. I think I understand, but I don't. Okay, and I call my friends or whatever it is. Like, can you please help me explain the situation over here and over here? And God, if they don't make sense to me, they make such complete sense that I feel exactly how they do. You're shooting an African American in the back, running away from a cop. Depict slavery when the slaves tried to run away. I didn't know that until I talked to a friend of mine. It makes complete how outraged I would be if someone did that to me. I didn't know. Being on the Civil Rights Commission gave me a great opportunity to hear people testify and see. I don't live in an African American world. I don't live in a city, but God damn it, I want to make it good for everybody. And by the way, I think, Troy, frankly, one of the problems in our country, we're a two-party country. And you can't, everybody says, well, where's the moderate? Where's the moderate? Right now, we got the far left and the far right calling the shots. So I think there's and God forbid, in our party, I can't speak to the other party. If a person gets wrong, they're only likely to do one time, they're ostracized for it.
Well,
and when they agree on 99% of everything else. So
okay.
Well, hold on a second. I mean, let's talk about some of the ramifications, though, of this Georgia law here. Major League Baseball pulled the game out of there, and people are obviously upset. A lot of small business owners in Atlanta who are going to make some money off of this are clearly upset. But at the same time, Colorado gains it. And people are trying to sit there and lump Georgia and Colorado together. Colorado had an 85% voter turnout this last time, 85%, and 90% of those voted online or by mail, which tells me that making it easier to vote increases participation. But did anybody have a problem with Major League Baseball moving the game?
Yes.
Well, no. I don't have a problem moving the game, but I think it brings up a broader issue. After the show last week, Brendan Walsh, who was on the show last week, and I went out to dinner, and he was saying, we really have like a businessocracy now. And it's like, are we cool with that? And I opened my Axios newsletter on Monday, and Jamie Dimon is saying businesses should be making policy. They should be really bigfooting their way through legislation. I think they already do, but I mean,
they've been working in cities for a long time.
Yeah, they should be taking a much, heavier role in actually making policy. I'm not cool with that. So, I mean, in the sense that I'm fine with them moving the All-Star game out of Georgia because it probably will do more to get things done than not. I do have a problem with the fact that we're going to end up living in a corporate, in a businessocracy.
The funniest thing I heard all week was Mitch McConnell saying that business should stay out of politics.
Oh, like, yeah. Well,
what, are you going to cut off the spigot there, buddy? Come on now. I mean, how long has business been in politics?
Just with checkbook, that's it.
Yeah, that's right. Just give us your money and shut the hell up. Is basically what they're saying.
It's pretty important to have done what baseball did. Baseball, I think, is more than a business, right? I mean, it's different than
it's America
or Delta Airlines saying something. I mean, it's the nation's pastime. It is a cultural institution. It has a history with equality and the march toward equality. And so it makes sense to me as a gesture, forget about the money end of it, for baseball to say, look, we're not going to play our signature game in a state that is doubling down on inequality. And look, I mean, if you go back to the civil rights movement, and I think we are now in the middle of something that's about as similar as that time as we've experienced since then. It was the movement of American institutions to the side of civil rights that moved things forward. Once it becomes unacceptable to the things that are foundational to being American, then it becomes unacceptable to more Americans. And so, I mean, I think it's a huge thing that baseball decided to do it based on this one set of bills in Georgia. And I hope that it does get people to understand that, look, this is not okay. This is un-American.
All right. Well, we've only got a few minutes left.
I agree with.
Go ahead, Allan.
I agree with what Steve says. The unfortunate part is that sports is one of those things that brings everyone together of all political stripes, and it prevents that from happening.
All right. Well, we've got to move on here. And we only have a few minutes left. We haven't even touched COVID yet. Michigan, again, right at the center of a new spike in COVID cases. We're not exactly sure what's going on here. We're seeing some of the variants that are taking a toll. Governor Whitmer this morning just announcing that she wants to take a 2-week break from in-person classes and any sports, just sort of piggybacking on the spring break that's taking place in a lot of schools right now, just to see if we can get this under control. In the meantime, more and more people getting vaccinated all the time. I get my second on Tuesday. I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
It's a big deal because I'm ready for this to be over like everybody else is. But it's just, it's going to be so hard to get over the finish line on this one. It's like somebody collapsing in mile 25 and a half in a marathon.
I think I wrote a column about it early this morning, and then she had the press conference. But I feel like she needs to pull back. It's like, things are happening. It's like, pull back for another month. I say, people say, oh, we don't know that it's happening in the restaurants. Well, we do know. If we look at health departments, we look at the press releases on their sites, there are restaurant staffs there's COVID outbreaks. And when there's COVID outbreaks at restaurants among staff, it gets passed on. People always go, I don't know what happened. The only thing I did was go out to a restaurant. I don't understand how I got it. The fact that she is voluntarily asking, I mean, first of all, some of the schools like the Detroit school system was already delaying the return for 2 weeks. There's other school systems. It's just a very wimpy way. I feel like, she took the right stances before, and now she's trying to do the most political beneficial to her to say, I'm not mandating. She's trying to be like down in Texas and other places where they say, well, people should use common sense. But we know that isn't possible in a lot of instances.
Well, I mean, the pressure is clearly on. Jeff, she's feeling pressure from all sides on this one. You've got, of course, the public health people saying that you've got to shut this down. You've got business owners screaming at her every day. I mean, and this is the kind of thing, depending on how we come out of this, that's going to determine whether or not she gets a second term.
Well, we don't have a candidate to run against her right now.
That is true. Although John James looks like he may be jumping in.
They keep pushing him out there.
We're going to find someone named COVID, last name COVID.
Name recognition. That's what it's all about.
All right. We got about 5 minutes left. And so I want to make sure we have enough time for our nominees for our weekly feature. And it's important that we get to this right now, everybody.
And now it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
Schmuck of the Week nominees. Who wants to go first today?
I'll go first.
All right, Jeff Sakwa, go for it.
I'll nominate the commissioner of baseball for being a hypocrite and being a member of the Augusta Country Club. And to talk about where corporate dollars are at just tells you where it's at. So,
I don't have an issue with that one, Jeff, at all, because, if you're going to be get out of Augusta.
The country club didn't allow black golfers for a long time, too.
Well, exactly. And in Augusta, as much as it's a beautiful golf course, I don't think I could ever be a member there, even if I was rich enough and they invited me, just because that place has pretty rough history. And they have not really done well there. I mean, think about Fuzzy Zeller made his famous comments there, among other things. And it's just not, yeah. I struggle with the Masters. I struggle with the Masters. Yeah. I do. And just the name of it. I mean, come on now. You think you could just change the name of that tournament? It's pretty bad. Yeah. Jeff, that's a good nominee. I like it. Who wants to go next? Nancy wants to go next.
I'll go next. I'm going with Pat Colbeck, who I learned this week was sent a threat letter by Dominion Voting Systems. And I know that he was pretty active immediately after the election, pushing his conspiracy theories about Dominion and the very Smartmatic voting machines and so forth. And he always claims I have a PhD in cyber security or something. He's Microsoft certified. That's what he always
aerospace engineer.
Yeah, and an aerospace engineer. Yes, exactly. But he's apparently running around with this gigantic PowerPoint presentation, which he's given at Republican clubs, making these claims about, vote shifting and blah, blah, blah. And he's thrown in with Team Crazy, which is, trying to discredit the Michigan election, which is not discreditable on any broad sense. And so he gets my nomination.
And I hope he's got a good lawyer, because he's going to need it very soon.
Yeah. This is a former state.
Dominion is not playing around.
No, I want them to nuke these people with legal actions. I mean, can you imagine being the Dominion Voting Systems CEO now, looking at the wreckage of your company?
Well, I've already called somebody about a branding campaign, because you're going to have to rename at this point. As simple as that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're already doing that kind of stuff. All right, Allan Lengel.
I have two. One is I live in Midtown, and the person who put up that billboard from Wendy's on the Baconator all day. It's that huge hamburger with a lot of bacon on, and I stare at it every day. So that's a schmuck right there. And the other one, I'm trying to eat healthy. And then the other one is Don Jr., who is still talking up and saying Hunter Biden would have never gotten a job without his father's name. And even Hunter Biden just says, "Oh, come on, that's comical." So even though Hunter Biden should not have taken the job in Ukraine, nonetheless, the Trumps are just blind to the hypocrisy of.
Understood.
Stephen, leave the Trumps alone, Allan. Come on.
Leave Donald alone.
Yes.
All right. Stephen, who do you got?
My talk of the week is actually Derek Chauvin, the Minneapolis officer who killed George Floyd. That trial is, of course, just dominating the news. I have not been able to watch because I get sick to my stomach just listening to the testimony or seeing the images. But the case that they are laying out and the detail that's coming out about what this police officer did and how long he did it, it's even more mind-blowing than the original video of him doing it, which is hard to imagine.
And the physicians,
I think we don't realize how long he had his knee on his neck after he was probably dead, for a period of time. And that's sort of...
And the physicians involved in this testimony so far who have been part of the prosecution have just been laying waste to the claims that somehow drugs may have impacted him or created a situation there. He was more vulnerable and more likely to die. He just said, nope, a healthy person that would have had these things done to him would have died. Anybody would have died at dealing with this kind of thing and the way they were doing it. And so, this doctor yesterday from Ireland who now works at, I think he's in Minneapolis, Mayo Clinic, but he's apparently wrote the quote Bible on breathing. That testimony yesterday, I watched it for about 2 hours and it was just like, wow, it's really tough to refute. And the defense didn't really have anything to counter with. So it's really interesting to watch. Okay, I've got my schmuck, and I also have a shout out. And so, the schmucks are Republicans, but so is the shout out. My shout out goes to Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who vetoed a bill that basically would have denied any health care coverage for transgender kids. And so it was basically a bill that would have restricted health care for transgender youth. They, of course, are schmucks because they overrode that veto. But here's what Asa Hutchinson said that I actually agree with, and I think it's important and people need to hear it. He said, "The nation is looking at Arkansas because I have on my desk another bill passed by the General Assembly that is a product of the cultural war in America." He said this would put the state as the definitive oracle of medical care, overriding parents, patients, and healthcare experts. He's exactly right to basically deny this bill. It serves no purpose other than to dehumanize those that identify as transgender, and that's all it's about. Culture war bullshit. And Asa Hutchinson tried, but they overrode the veto. And so Arkansas, you just guarantee that I'm not coming to visit anytime soon.
We probably won't get an all-star game either. I'm just
Probably not. But I mean,
it's not on the top of the list anyways, Arkansas. I'm sorry.
But are you really going to go to Arkansas?
No, but you know what? I'd like to think that there might be something to see there. But it's just why this was so unnecessary. This is just a hateful, spiteful bill that people are just, rattling against things that they don't understand and don't want to understand. And that is the very definition of stupidity in my mind, is basically burying your head in the sand to the fact that there are people out there that are living their own lives. And just because you don't understand it doesn't mean you get to dictate whether or not they get to do it. Period. That's it. So my schmucks are the legislature in Arkansas, you spineless bastards. All right, that's going to have to do it for today. I want to thank everybody for participating. Thank you to Stephen Henderson, and we always appreciate you, sir. And of course, his show is Monday through Friday on WDET from 9 to 10 a.m. He does a fantastic job in that time slot, and I appreciate the fact that he is still there after, 5 years now, right?
I think this is year 6.
Year 6. Wow. So
anniversary.
Keeping it going. We appreciate that. Jeff Sakwa, we appreciate what you do as well, sir. Thank you for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it. It was a pretty enlightening conversation. Good to have you. We'll have you back.
Thank you.
Nancy Derringer and Allan Lengel of Deadline Detroit. We always appreciate it. By the way, Nancy Derringer has a fantastic column out today on DeadlineDetroit.com about the ongoing saga between my former place of employ and Nicole Curtis, the rehab addict.
And can I say for the record that you are not the source quoted?
Thank you, because people have been asking me already this morning. Okay, I am not the source on that.
It is a great column, though.
It is. It's a good read.
The best line in that column was when you described them as two bald men fighting over a comb.
Thank you. That's one I've had in my saddlebags for a while.
Oh, hey, bald lives matter. Come on.
It was a good one. We certainly do appreciate it. Also, thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering the broadcast today. We appreciate him. Thanks to Lynette Shrimphouse for sponsoring this show and sponsoring DeadlineDetroit.com. Don't forget, become a member at DeadlineDetroit.com. That's DeadlineDetroit.com/membership. $3 a month. Get all your news needs fulfilled. with some fun stuff, some newsy stuff, and great shows like this one each and every week. We appreciate everybody. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. And until you get vaccinated,
stay home safely.
The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.